In my own little bubble, in what I do with the kids that we work with, I'm not afraid. They are amazing. Every single one of them has something to give towards our construction industry.
Are you interested in involving the next generation into the building industry? What do you think about the knowledge and behavior shortage? How can we encourage real partnerships between schools and the industry? Stay tuned for answers from Alison Watson.
What is the future for cities? Do you want to learn more about them? Do you want to know how others think about them? Do you want to be part of the conversation? Then this is the right place.
Welcome to What is the Future for Cities podcast. Today, I will interview Alison Watson, founder and chief executive of Class of Your Own. We will talk about her vision for the future of cities, the next generation, education as increasing confidence and resilience, and many more. So let's start with a proper introduction. Alison Watson MBE is the founder and chief executive of Class of Your Own, a social enterprise revolutionizing education in the built environment sector. Starting her industry life as a land surveyor, Alison's industry expertise has fueled her passion for the past 16 years to educate the next generation in surveying, architecture, engineering, and construction. Through COYO's Design Engineer Construct DEC curriculum, she has empowered thousands of students and teachers globally with innovative STEM programs, work experience, and accredited qualifications via TQUK. Honored with an MBE, an Honorary Doctorate from Heriot Watt University, and an Honorary Fellowship of the Chartered Institution of Civil Engineering Surveyors, Alison now serves as the CICES President, championing Make Space for Education. And with that, Alison, welcome to the podcast. Thank you so much for your time. I highly appreciate your appearance on the podcast. And let's jump right in. What does the future of cities mean to you?
I'm 54. I don't know how much future I have. I hope there's a lot. But I think the past 20 years really working around young people and really trying to understand what they need. They don't always know what they want, but I think you can derive what they need. And I think that whole future city, to me, we need to be leading, we need to be learning. And I know a lot of people, when I've spoken to them about future cities, whether it be young people, old people, really clever people, I know some really clever people. And we always go on to smart. It comes out every time. We talk about technology, we talk about transport, we talk about roads that'll power your car, we talk about shoes that'll power your iPhone. But actually, I think it's more about getting back to that genuine people, purpose, planet. I have a daughter. She's 22. She's studying philosophy, the meaning of life and all that. And we have some deep and meaningfuls, we really do. But I always say to Kate, but what's your purpose? What's your purpose in life? What are you going to leave on this earth for all this education, for all this nurturing that I hope me and her dad have given her and helped her through life and so on? What footprint are you going to leave on this planet? What's going to make you feel so good when you get to my age and you go, you know what, I did all right. So I think that whole thing about the future of cities has to be about better education. And we're going to have to expand on that, Fanny, because what does better mean? And it'll mean different things to different people, but we definitely need a better education system. I think it's about imagination. I'm curious about everything. And I think the more imaginative we can be and really not STEM, it comes back to education. I think there's been a whole stemming of creativity. I think we've been so focused on get to university. There's a pattern in life, right? You're born, you go to primary school, secondary school, you probably go to college, university, and then you get a job. My daughter's actually said, do you mind if I don't get a job? Do you mind if I actually go and discover me for a year? Now, you might call that a gap year, but for her, it just feels something deeper than that. I think she wants to have all these experiences, not just go on party or holiday or, I don't know, go and work somewhere for a year. I think she wants to have a whole load of experiences. And I love that. I'm like, yep, no worries. You just go and do that. I think we need to be more socially conscious in the future. I think we can look at that whole social impact piece with rose-tinted glasses a little bit. We tick boxes a lot for that social impact. I think the future of cities will absolutely depend on being more socially conscious. I think we need to be more digitally fluent, maybe. I think about the older generation. They are still here. The future of cities. I'm going to be the future of cities as an old person. I know that there is such digital deconnectedness. That's the wrong word, but disconnectedness or deconnectedness. Maybe that is a word. I know that there's an awful lot of the older generation who will still be around. The future's this afternoon, right? It's not just 10 years, 15 years, 20 years. I think we really need to help the older generation really connect with the changes that are going to be made. I think from 2027, there's going to be no more analog phones. The landline is going to disappear. Yeah, that's what I've read. So how does my mum cope with that when she said, I have to have my landline? You have your number, Mum. You don't have a landline. There's no copper wire. And trying to help them understand there's nothing to be frightened of. Actually, it's nothing to be frightened of. And that we should really be embracing that. And I feel a little bit like that with AI. I don't know a lot about AI, but I am an optimist. I should warn you that. I am a born optimist. I am probably one of the most optimistic people you might ever meet. Maybe that's naive, but I do happy. Please don't bring your negative vibes on me because it's not going to work. I'll turn you around within half an hour because I don't do negative. I think we've got to be positive about life. So the future of cities is a positive city, a place where people can genuinely be happy. And I suppose the most worrying thing about that happiness in the future is the young people who will be those adults who will take over my job and will take over your job, Fanny. I worry there's a lot of sadness in the world at the moment with young people. I think there's a lot of confusion. I think there's a lot of frustration. I've just done a piece just over the weekend around young people who apply for dozens and dozens of jobs and they get no response, no feedback, no nothing. And they go, but I'm trying so hard. What is it that I'm doing wrong? I think the future of cities has to be more human, actually, which goes probably against the whole technology smart drive. But I think we have to remember that we are still humans and be more human and treat everyone more humanely. Yeah, the future of cities, what does it mean to me? It means happy people first. Happy people equals happy planet equals bring on all the technology you want because people will be so ready to embrace that. So future of cities is happiness first. How about that?
I love it. And I am so glad you started with this. I am optimistic and I will turn you around. I will not bring you negativity because I'm not necessarily optimistic, but I am working for a better future for cities. So I don't have time to do negativity unless we find in them the opportunity itself, which we can work on. And also I have the pleasure to interview people like yourself. So I have the pleasure to talk with optimists, hopeful people, or actual activists and workers who are working for a better future for cities, thus humanity. You mentioned purpose, and you mentioned that you asked your daughter what is her purpose. What is your purpose?
I think my purpose has been certainly for the last 16 years, because I was a land surveyor before this. And I think even if I can think back to my life and my purpose, when I left school at 18 years old with a head full of maths, and even then, I guess I wanted to do something differently. I left school at 16, actually, and went to college because I wanted this purpose with mathematics. I needed to do a really cool, interesting job. Even back in my day, that was 1987 when I was 16. And we were cool. We're not as cool maybe as the 16-year-olds of today, but we've had our own cool and what we wanted to be. But it was certainly something doing maths, because maths and applied mathematics, I guess that's the easiest way of describing it, just made me feel good. It sounds a bit weird, but yeah, it made me feel good. I used to get excited by doing mathematics. I think I was excited by the fact that I could solve that problem. So there was definitely the problem solving. And I know it's a little bit cliche sometimes, I want to solve problems, but I knew that I enjoyed that. I knew that it was something that I suppose even at 16 got me out of bed in the morning. And I argued with my school because they wanted to send me down this pure mathematics route where everything was, I don't know, nothing really made sense. And that's a shame because maths is supposed to be that one thing in life where there's always a definitive answer. So I left school, went to college. It was awful. I had the most awful experience. I guess you come through life being nurtured in school, right? People look after you. People kick you at the backside when you've not done your homework. They give you a detention when you've been naughty. I never had a detention, by the way. I didn't have a detention. The school, there's something about a certain healthy, I don't want to say parenting because teachers aren't your parents, but although they seem to be more and more these days having to do the job. But there was that nurture. I think that's the difference. There was a nurture in school that you don't get when you get to the big wide world of college. So that purpose of doing something with mathematics left me because it was just such an awful experience. It's almost like the care went. It was just like you rock up, you do your lesson and you go home. And do we care really whether you turn up again tomorrow? That's my experience. That's how I felt. I am not setting a precedent, by the way, and that is not college, but it was college for me. So that whole purpose thing, it was kind of like purpose just became get a job. Just get a job. I need a job. So I went into a bank because it was numbers. I thought it would be really cool. It wasn't. It was awful. It was boring. And then when I got to 25, I met a guy in a nightclub. Let's call it what it was. Civil engineer. He fascinated me with the conversation. I'd never even heard of a civil engineer. I can't even perceive now that conversation. How ridiculous to have never heard a civil engineer, but people haven't, even still now. So I went out with him, got on site, loved it. There was my purpose. I love being outside. I love nature. I love the outdoors. Oh my God, I'm suddenly having that purpose that I didn't think I'd have in school. And even if that purpose was walking around the countryside, making maps, to a lot of people, that's not fun. That might be a bit dull for a lot of people. But for me, I was part of that big problem solving that was making stuff, but big stuff, highways, railways, buildings. I actually have a tingle on the back of my neck just even talking about it because it was just so exciting every day. And suddenly my purpose became about being part of that big network of construction people. I thought that was so cool. And I think the whole sort of women-in approach, it was cool being the only woman. It never fazed me. I was never like, oh my God, I'm going to be treated differently. It's going to be awful. The men are going to hate me. I had nothing but happy times on site as well. There you go again, happiness. But I guess where life changed massively, and I talked about that social purpose that I think people need to have, I suddenly got into the biggest job I'd ever taken on. And that was working for the government school building programme. So the Labour government at the time wanted to basically rebuild every secondary school. You can imagine that was a massive programme right across England. This was the, yes, UK government, but it was an English intention to replace every school. And I started working in Hackney in East London. And I got into site that first day. And you get a certain sort of nonchalance, I guess. You get on site, set your instrument up, you get on with your job, and you talk to people. I always chat to people, what you're doing, explain why you're there. But I'd never been surrounded by children asking me what I do. And it was a little bit daunting, actually, because you've got a very expensive piece of equipment on 3 legs on a tripod. And this equipment was the most, for me, incredible technology. It was a laser-driven total station. It was robotic, so it moved around on its own. You could measure stuff without even being on the other end. Surveying is that traditional, somebody's at the instrument and somebody was on a pole with a prism on the end. No, this is an instrument that could, it was called reflectors. It could basically hit targets and give you the information without somebody having to stand on a roof. So I had a lot of fun with that with children, because what do you do? Is this a TV camera? You talk to any land surveyor, they've all had these experiences. It's the coolest maths you'll ever find in a box. And suddenly talking to these young people, my whole purpose in life became, oh my God, these kids need to know this stuff. They need to share that extraordinary excitement, that experience that I'd had where I've gone through school with a fairly normal education. Nobody had told me that maths could be so cool. And I think the biggest fear for a lot of children in school is mathematics. You look at most countries, I don't want to say all countries, because some countries seem to have it nailed. I'm not going to say I necessarily agree with the way they train kids and teach kids maths. I'm not even going to go there. But the way that we were teaching maths in school, you'll hear about it, kids in rows, Victorian times, it was pretty dull. Put things on a whiteboard, a triangle, let's calculate the hypotenuse of this. And I'm like, hypotenuse what? A lot of kids were like, I'm never going to use this, it's boring. For me, it was fascinating. For me, I realised that when I got into surveying, it was all angles and distances and all this trigonometry that I used to love at school. Wow, here is the maths that I love. And so trying to impart that into kids and saying, look, if you want to get a job, you have to get your maths. Whether you like it or not, you have to get your maths. So why don't you try and enjoy it? And let me show you how enjoyable it can be. So I had a lot of fun on site, on the school grounds, measuring stuff, laughing about how long is your body parts and how tall are you? Because kids didn't know, they end up being, I don't know, the length of your arm. We'd laugh about they're 2 meters tall, but they think a meter is something like a foot, 12 inches. We don't even use that anymore. So we'd laugh about they actually quite short and these big tall guys, and we go, because you don't know measurement and therefore you're really short. So we had a lot of fun, and me being happy, me being a fun person, me laughing a lot and seeing the joy in everything just suddenly gave me a whole new purpose. Purpose had to be involved in that education discussion. And I'm not a teacher. Teachers, my God, they're amazing people. They give so much time to kids. It sounds a bit their last breath to children. I really think there are teachers out there who would do that. They are just so passionate about children and growth and giving them the best start in life. And I just felt so sad that some kids probably didn't appreciate that. I don't think every parent probably appreciates that. Teachers, you do your job, get my child through education. And so I guess my new purpose became, wonder if I could do something to help these kids or to help their teachers understand the purpose of maths and bring it to life and have fun with it and enjoy it, not be stuck in this room full of textbooks. Purpose matters. And I never thought it would be something so simple as just get maths. But it has been. And 16 years and counting. I hope when people are still listening to this in 10 years' time that I'm still doing this. My kids are still enjoying it and seeing the point. So my purpose became, and it's become a mission statement for us, for the little social enterprise I set up, to educate the future of construction. That's my purpose now. And I live it and I breathe it and I love it. I've never worked a day in my life for 16 years. That's my purpose.
This sounds amazing, and I can relate so many of your good and awful experiences during your education. You mentioned education, training, parenting, and many other versions of this concept. And I would love to understand, how do you differentiate between these? Because you also mentioned that we need better education for the future.
That's a really good question. What is it to educate? I guess the biggest thing is confidence. It's not about how confident you are about recalling them. There's a train of thought in education. I'm going to quote you a fantastic guy to look up. I have a lot of respect for this head teacher because he talks with true passion about what is education actually for. And you should look him up. He's the head teacher of King Egbert School. He's a guy called Paul Haig. There's a lot of people like this, actually. I could reel off head teachers. I could reel off teachers, loads of teachers, probably hundreds of teachers who I have such respect for. But when we talk about what is education for, I think it's to make confident, resilient young people, old people. When we learn stuff, it's got to be about resilience. It's got to give us that something that will carry us through life, right? And I think the biggest thing that is lacking today with children is the confidence in their education, the confidence in their school, and the confidence in their ability to use what they learned at school. And I think a lot of children will say, oh, I'm confident. I can go out. I can schmooze the crowd. I can talk. Okay, talk to me about your maths. How are you going to pass your maths this year? How are you going to get over your exams? How are you going to talk to that employer who's going to come in? And basically in the classroom with what I do, it's almost like an interview. We don't call it an interview, but in our classrooms, and I should probably explain just a little bit about what I do, because I suppose for a lot of listeners who are thinking classrooms, she's a land surveyor. I'm not a land surveyor anymore. I go into classrooms. I wrote a curriculum called Design Engineer Construct. You can look at it, designengineerconstruct.com. That's not a plug. That's just a read that and you'll understand what I do. And I wrote a curriculum that has children follow the same principles of construction from concept to handover. They design stuff, they engineer stuff, they construct stuff. They do it digitally. And the one thing that I want young people to have is the confidence to talk about what they've learned, what they do, what they deliver, what they would change, what they create. I want them to have the confidence for when an architect comes in the room and challenges what they've designed, to be able to say, actually, I thought about that. And actually, this is the way I've solved that problem, because I've really dug down into the problem. I've really tried to understand how people are going to use that building, or how we're going to make sure it's energy efficient, that children have that confidence to speak and to be able to use that so that when they come to interview, the interviewer, and let's hope, please God, not just a human resources person who doesn't understand what they've learned. Let's hope it's somebody who does understand architecture, engineering, construction, etc. Because I want them to have the confidence to go into an interview and go, hey, this is me and you need me because, and confidently say that. So to me, education is a waste if we can't take every child with us, if we can't give them the confidence to say, I know this stuff, I can use this stuff. The use is so important. What is the point of learning if you can't use it? I want to impart that confidence. I want to give teachers the opportunity to meet people in industry to say, hey, you know that geometry stuff? This is how I use it as an engineer. This is how I use geometry as an architect. And actually, you could show kids this stuff. So this school building is actually this living, breathing tool that applies everything you teach. Everything you teach is here in this building. Use it, look at it, observe it, learn from it, teach it. Get up from the chair and get the kids measuring stuff. Get the kids calculating that heat transfer that goes on through that window. That's what I want. And I think the more that education can be about giving children these tools and this confidence to go out there in the big wide world and say, I know this stuff because I did this in the classroom with the help of my fantastic teacher, embedded and nurtured by my fantastic parents and everybody around me, my community, then that's education. It's not just getting a job.
I'm curious whether this understanding of education for you has been changing, because with new technologies, with new applications of AI, we have been seeing, for example, tutoring AIs which teach the kids in a very personal way. In my experience, the teachers didn't have the time to individually work with the children in a classroom. These AI tutors can specifically be tailored to the children, thus changing the teacher's role in the education system itself. And also, I'm curious whether this kind of new world with these new tools would change your education and understanding, because I understand the confidence and I completely agree with the resilience part. For me, education, it would have been great if it taught me how to learn. And that would have given me confidence and resilience. I mainly learned how to answer questions, and that's not learning. So I'm curious whether these new approaches, new technologies change your understanding of education.
Do you know what? I think they add to it, actually. I'm not afraid of AI. A lot of people are. A lot of my friends, they go, oh my God, this ChatGPT stuff. Oh my God. They know too much about me. Actually, they don't know too much about you. You tell them about you. And I think that's the hook. I've spent a couple of years training my AI to know me. It's pretty good. I challenge my AI. I go, no, absolutely not. That's not right. I'm doing this as I'm doing it. I'm chatting to my AI. Absolutely not. I need to think about this. I think the secret of AI, I think where it could be really good for children, young people, for teachers even, is again, it's back to problem solving. It's about challenge. It's that ability to say, I don't agree with that. I think the problem is, and to your point, we are given information, we absorb it like a sponge, sometimes not so spongy, but we like to think that our children absorb that information that's coming from the front, the textbook. And I suppose it's quite selective what we hear, because we hear what we want to hear, first of all. We cast aside which is boring. If you see a kid sat like that, they're probably not taking a lot in. Heads on their hands, they're falling asleep. That's probably not going to be a great lesson. But I think with AI, the ability to challenge, I think it's absolutely right that we should not just take in, what difference is it with AI from another teacher if all you're doing is accepting everything that AI says? You could say blue is red. And a lot of children will go, yeah, blue is red. Fantastic. The new blue is red. No, I think the smartest child and the smartest thing we can do is encourage the child to challenge. And I think that getting to know your AI is really important. I like using AI. The time it saves in just trying to, for example, I'll give you a great example. Over this weekend, I've put a post on LinkedIn that basically says, if the apprenticeship route is so good, then why is it so hard to access? Discuss. I've put a few thoughts down. And the stuff that's come back, it's gone a bit crazy. I expected most people to be having a day off on a Sunday, but no, all these people. And there's been a couple of guys who've argued publicly on this post. It's really set people thinking. And then you've got all that information. You go, oh my goodness, there's so many different points of view here. This is so interesting how this guy is an employer and he thinks this way. This person's a teacher and they think that way. This young person's a student and they're panicking about this and this is not working. And to take all that information and digest it, throw it into AI and go, throw me something back. What is the general consensus? What are people thinking? What is the challenge? It's a great tool. It's a great tool when you need to be quick. It's a great tool when you just need to be a little bit provocative to bring out the nuances of how people are thinking. But what it doesn't do, this is why I think the human being will always work alongside AI very beautifully. It's that emotion, that human nature, that thing that humans have that nobody else has, that no other animals might have. I think that we will survive a long time against the robot, the AI, because that emotional side, that ability to go, oh, that's really interesting. I wonder how he feels. What's made him say that? He must feel really bad about something. And then as I was reading through all these different responses, I was empathizing with him and with her. And they were saying that I suppose I don't feel threatened by AI because I am still a human, emotional. I'm a person who thinks and empathizes. I think I hope empathy is one of my biggest strengths. And I'm not entirely sure that you can replicate that in AI. For my AI, who might be listening to me now, you can challenge me on that. I think it can work beautifully. And I think it can help those children who are maybe the kids in the middle, the kids who don't necessarily speak out in a lesson. We're doing a lot with this at the moment in my organization. The kids who just somehow get lost along the way for no particular reason. They don't speak out in class. They're not the troublemakers. They're not the ones who go, oh, I don't want to be here. And they're out the class. Go outside. Go and see the head teacher. They're not kids who always have their hands up because they know everything. And they're always like, pick me, miss. I know the answer. Come on, pick me. I know it. But the kids in the middle who bumble along in life and don't have the confidence. There we go again. They don't have the confidence to say, stop. I didn't get that. They can just go home and go, hey, my friendly AI, my teacher said this in class. I do not know what she meant. What on earth did that mean? Help me. Wow, isn't that beautiful that you can go home and just rely on a friend? So again, it's teaching the children those resilience and confidence skills and not to take every answer as gospel, to challenge that answer. And if we think about the future of cities, we're going to need that. When you think about that resilience, that climate change, I worry that kids are being told it's going to be an awful place. We should be frightened. The world is on fire. No, it's not. It's not. And I think with AI and the children and the opportunities they will have to overcome some of these massive challenges that we have as grown-ups at the moment, I think AI will be wonderful. I really do. And I think we need it because we're not moving fast enough. We're not. So yeah, bring it on. I love AI. And a child, if he wants to explore AI, just do it properly and be guided. Don't just take everything as read, but certainly don't be afraid of it.
I also think that the next generation's evolution or development will be so exponential that although we have seen a difference between my generation and my parents' generation in knowledge and adaptability and stuff like that, but the next generation, because of these AI tools, they will learn so much faster than us. Then it will be a marvelous time. And I also think that we need to make sure that they know they can change the future, not just accept it.
But if you ask that same child, so how does that make you feel? There's a lovely guy, a friend of mine who is an architect in Manchester and did a great presentation a few months ago as an architect, how is AI helping them to move faster? So they can do the interview. What do you want from your building? They can put it into AI and it brings out this amazing image that is just so advanced. Wonderful. Now, we encourage children to do this. Be creative. And then you say, and how will that building make the end users feel? And you get silence. I don't know. What do you mean? But how do you want to feel in this building? Does what you've plugged into the AI tell you how people will feel? And again, I think it's that whole thing around the humanness of AI. It doesn't bring that to the fore. You can't feel in a building. We do a lot on sensory experience of a building. Can AI replicate the sensory experience of a building when it can't touch, feel, smell, etc.? Maybe we'll create an AI that can smell. I don't know, but I'm sure we will. But it will be artificial. That's the point. There's nothing more human than the senses of, I see this. I stand on top of the hill and I go, oh my God, look at this. It's all mine. It's wonderful. It's beautiful. And it gives me that lovely feeling. I'm so happy inside. I sat on a bench this weekend with the most amazing landscape in the Peak District. Look it up. It's beautiful. And I just had my dogs around me, just me. It was 7 o'clock in the morning. The birds were singing. I felt so good and felt so happy. Can AI do that? Can AI feel? I'm not sure. I'm not sure it will. And that's what I hope children will always remember, that AIO will only take you so far on the journey. You have to be human about it.
And I assume this human approach or humanity is a concern for you. What are the 3 biggest concerns regarding the future of cities for you?
It's got to be number 1, the skills shortage. Everybody's talking about it, right? Oh, the future of cities, we're going to build this, we're going to do this, we're going to be so much more efficient. No, you're not. Let's just get that straight. No, you're not, because you're going to retire before it happens. So I suppose the skills shortage, I hate the fact that we always say it's a skills shortage. We never talk about knowledge shortage. It's just a skill. Apparently, to build a city, all you need is skills. No, you need knowledge. So let's stop talking about the skills shortage. Let's talk about the knowledge and skills shortage. Actually, there's a behaviour shortage because you need to use certain behaviours if you're going to build the future city. Let's just call it build, for want of better words. Actually, no, let's not. There you go. I've already counted myself. If we're going to design future cities, we need more designers. We need more creativity. Maybe a lot of people think that AI will just do it for us. Again, I still believe you need humans. So I think, bearing in mind, when I left school, there was a skills gap, 1980s. We're still talking about the same thing now. It's getting bigger and bigger and bigger every year. And whilst I don't want to go down that road about the perception of construction, it's not all hard hat and muddy boats. Oh, God, change the record. Stop talking about this. We need to change something in education that makes our industry the most exciting place ever. The future of cities will be delivered by that 8-year-old. Because that 8-year-old is soon 18 and is 28. They've been to university or not. They've learned everything they need to know through AI. They're ready to go. So I think the skills shortage, the skills, knowledge, behaviours, attitude shortage, that's clearly one of the biggest fears, concerns. In my own little bubble, in what I do with the kids that we work with, I'm not afraid. They are amazing. Every single one of them has something to give towards our construction industry. So I don't worry for my little bubble of students, although I do worry that they have all this knowledge, skills, behaviours, competency even by the time they're 18, and nobody hears them. They apply for millions of jobs between them. Nobody hears them. Nobody sees them. They fall through the cracks because the sift is done by AI. Oh, here we go again. We could be on for a week talking about this. The sift is not done by a human being who looks at the portfolio and goes, oh my God, because the AI doesn't know to click on that link to look at the portfolio and read that this child has been learning about the future of cities since they were 11. I worry about the future of cities because the attitude of our own current construction industry, it'll just happen. We'll solve the problem. Let's not worry about the number of kids coming through. We'll worry about it on the newspapers. We'll write another report, but we'll not actually do something meaningful at a younger age to make sure that kids are so excited by the construction industry. It's all they ever want to be. We'll worry about the shortage of, I don't know, there'll be no more gamers. Oh my God, we're going to have no more gamers and no more bloggers because everybody wants to go into construction. Now, that's a headline that I'm aiming for. I think there's a disconnected education, clearly. If you can't see the relevance of what you learn, what's the point? So we've lost future leaders already. Can't see the point. They can't see the drive. I suppose it's still part and parcel of I'd rather be a vlogger than an engineer. And I suppose I've alluded to it. There seems to be a huge apathy. We'll write a report and we'll talk about the problem and we'll put the report out and everybody will go, look at these statistics, look at this data. Oh my God, there's X number, I don't know, hundreds of thousands of people we now need in the construction industry to make it right. I don't even care anymore because it almost think of a number, put a 0 on it, that's about right. Industry must meaningfully engage with education. And the biggest problem there is one word, meaningful. What does it actually mean? This is traditional way. And I'm not knocking people. Oh, please, God, I'm not. I love the people in the construction industry and they're trying so hard. But because of this disconnect, schools are accountable to the inspectorate to make sure they are delivering good careers advice. We have a thing over here called Gatsby benchmarks. So they have their own standards to meet. Industry, construction industry, firms, organizations, contractors, consultants, they tender for a piece of work. They want to build a new hospital. We have to tender to win the work. Our margins are really small. We're the construction industry, small profit margins. So we've really got to cut anything that we do in a social function, giving back to the community. We need to make sure that's cheap as possible because all our profit needs to be made from building. We're there to build, right? We're not there to educate. We're there to build. So the traditional sweet menu of giving back to the community tends to be things like your careers talks, your careers fairs, your mock interviews, and so on. Even as I've said it, thinking about what I've just written this weekend, a mock interview for a child who will never actually get an interview because the AI has already decided they're not going to get there. So we're building this confidence in children. Can you see how all this thing is joining together? We're building this confidence in children by giving them a mock interview, by giving them careers advice, by doing a careers fair, except that we never follow through when they actually want a job. So what's the point? So the mock interview, it becomes a box ticking exercise. Okay, we're going to rock up. We're going to get these 14-year-olds. I'm going to try really hard. The wonderful people who do these things, they really genuinely believe that this is going to impact the child. And then they go away. They've had a careers fair. They've given out however many Haribo sweets and ballpoint pens and leaflets and shown some AI, maybe. They've maybe shown some digital twin technology. We've all put the Oculus Rift on and we've gone around a building where all the kids have gone, wow, this is amazing. And then they go back to class and stand in front of a whiteboard and they just have the same kind of education. We go back to norm. We go back to the day-to-day because schools do not have the technology that they need. So they can't replicate what you've just seen. They can't just stick an Oculus Rift on a child and go, that stuff that we've done on geometry, look at these buildings, look at these roof slopes, look and walk around your building and see how many areas you can identify. They don't have that because there's no investment in technology. I demand, if I was education manager, I demand that every school gives the same technology to kids as they're going to use in the workplace. That's preparation. Can we afford it? Do we think like that? No. There's a lot to learn. And I suppose where industry needs to be more connected is, yes, showing young people how exciting the world can be, but following through when they've done it, making sure that the apprenticeship opportunities are there. And I suppose I'm going to finger point a little bit about the government, because I think the government just thinks that, well, schools will do their job and construction will do their job and we'll all be happy at the end of it. It'll all come together. But no, because a lot of the ministers, a lot of the MPs, they don't know what it's really like at the coalface. I do admire those countries who've got ministers in charge who know the sector for which they are governing, because at least you have an appreciation of the challenges that you can't just flick this switch and it's going to happen overnight. So yeah, that disconnect needs solving. And I think in that, my own little bubble, we've solved the problem, but I'm still frustrated that we have kids who've got such knowledge, such skills, such behavior, such appetite for an industry. And it comes to the job application is no. And they come back to me and go, you've sold me a dream here. I've gone through school thinking that construction industry is the most amazing place to be. And if I study this route, I will get a job. And yet nobody even gives me a response. How come I don't get a job? How come I have to take the same route as everybody else and go to university for 3 years? When I want an apprenticeship, I am used to working and learning. I've been doing it in school since I was 11 and I come to 18 and I want that apprenticeship route. I want that applied learning route. I wanted to continue. I love working and they don't even get a response. They don't even get feedback as to why they didn't get through so they can learn better. Failure is a good thing. We're told that. If you fail, you learn better. There are some people who say fail once, fail twice, but fail better every time. Except we're not telling our children where they're failing. So how can they ever learn to do it better next time? Please give kids feedback.
I would correct that statement. Please give feedback. Not just kids, but also.
Oh, God. Yeah.
But I agree. I completely agree. Before we move on to the opportunities, because that's very important that we are not just complaining, but also finding those opportunities. What age would you recommend to engage with kids?
Birth. We've now started with 4-year-olds and it's just so lovely. I used to think 11 to 14 was the right age because there seemed to be that huge gap from going to primary school and learning all that lovely stuff by one teacher where everything was joined up, where you could stop that teacher if there's something in science that you're doing about a leaf and you wanted to draw the leaf, you could do it. And then they got to secondary school and it was suddenly everything is in silos. You have a different teacher for every subject. And that connectedness that you had in primary school, where there was a natural, you're going from science to art because suddenly you want to draw the leaf and all the veins and all the parts of the leaf. And suddenly you can get really creative and science becomes creative. And of course, it is creative. But when you go into secondary school, high school, you have physics first thing in the morning. And then you go to PE. And then you go to English. And you go, okay, how are you going to join up physics, PE, and English? I'm sure there's a way. Forces. Maybe I'm pushing something in PE, so that's a force. Pushing something in PE, we're rolling a ball through PE. And then we can write a story about what we did. I don't know. I'm not a teacher. But it's so disconnected. So what I tried to do was, let's start at 11 and show that the one thing that connects us all with all those subjects that you learn is the built environment. You might call it the future of the city. But if you think about the built environment, it is science, it's maths, it's art, it's history, all the subjects rolled into one. And I've always said, whatever you want to be in life, there is a building for you. And you can have a lot of fun creating it. You can research it. You can look at what did the Romans do for us. Think about the Colosseum. If you're going to design a round building, the Colosseum, how did the Romans do it? How did the Romans get those arches in? So you can look back in history. You can be creative with art. You can think about physics because the building's got to stand up, that arch that can't fall down. You can weave in all these different subjects. And I suppose that 11 years old was, let's try and keep that nature table, that primary approach, that holistic approach to education. So if we start at 11, and also because we can start children thinking about they can be leaders of the future, they can design stuff and change their planet. They start learning about climate change from quite an early age now. But to be the problem solvers of that climate change, to see things in an optimistic way, but also a very logical way. Sometimes my optimism is a bit crazy. People go, you should be a pragmatist. That's crazy. Your idea that everybody will eventually, there'll be peace on earth and everybody will love each other. There'll be no more wars. And who knows, Russia and Ukraine might eventually become the best of friends. That's never going to happen. And actually, that's probably never going to happen. But I think the optimism of education where you can bring all things, you can have fun, you can be happy, you can challenge, you can create, you can build your confidence, build your resilience. I think that's at least got to be 11 years old. And there's also something lovely about 11 years old is that you don't opt out at 11. Here in UK at 14 years old, you choose your options. You choose which subjects, 8 or 10 subjects you're going to really concentrate on. Now, I know around the world, a lot of people will be thinking, my goodness, the English education system, how bonkers does that sound? But it is what it is. You have to choose these options. And I think the nice thing about 11 and 12 and 13 is that you all learn the same in every class. You don't get to choose. You don't get to opt out. You don't get to say, I don't like this subject, I'm going to leave. I dropped French when I was 14. I hated French. I didn't particularly like my teacher. And now I love French. Oh my God, I wish I'd done French at school because it would be so useful. But I didn't like the teacher, so I opted out. You can't opt out at 11 or 12 or 13. So let's embed all the fun stuff, all the cool stuff, all the future of city stuff from 11 to 13. When children can look at each other, girl, boy, it doesn't matter whether you're he, she, or they, you can look at each other and go, hey, we're all the same here. We're all in the same classroom. I have as much right to be here as you have. In fact, we don't talk about it because you're just there. You're just present. So all the stuff around construction is for boys. We don't have to deal with that because girls and boys are learning the same in the classroom. So our girls who come through, they don't get to 14 and suddenly go, oh my God, I'm a girl. I can't do this anymore. I have to stop. So some of the best students are the girls who've carried on because it became normalized at 11. And I think what needs to change is this normalization of applied learning of technical subjects. And let's stop talking about technical subjects and vocational subjects like they're a poor relation. 11 years old, you can make stuff. Primary school, you weren't told when you were making something in primary school that, oh, you'll never be anything because you can only do some things with your hands. Except that when you get to secondary school, you're told he's good with his hands, so he can be a builder. Might not be very academic, so let's just get him through and maybe he'll not get his maths, but he can go and build. We've got rubber stamped from a very young age that if you're only good at making stuff with your hands, then you're probably not going to be very academic. You're probably not going to make university. Go into construction because that's the place for you. No, place for everyone. And I think at 11 years old, children, they're still children. There's still a glimmer of hope for them all to be happy and nurtured and find their way, actually own their cities. Look outside and go, this is where I live. This is mine, and I'm going to impact it.
Thank you so much for giving us these examples. I, to be honest, went through the architecture education, and I had the fortune to have one professor who sat down with me, and we discussed a lot of things, how the houses forms change throughout history, because he was a history professor, he's architecture history professor. And how the forms changed because of the different construction technologies and techniques that were available at that time. And nobody has made those connections in the lectures or the workshops or the tutorials or whatever. I had the great fortune to sit down with that professor, and that was amazing. And there was no holistic approach, which you mentioned, that this is how these are connected. And nobody has made those connections. So these were very siloed. Even though we are just talking about one building, not math, physics, biology, chemistry, which are huge topics themselves. I assume that creating this kind of holistic approach or connecting these dots is a huge opportunity. So what are the three biggest opportunities regarding the future of cities for you?
The whole sort of sustainability agenda. If we can equip students with the knowledge to tackle the climate, health, the housing challenges, wow, the world will be a great place. So I think the opportunity of getting children to understand that sustainability and the big stuff that we worry about that keeps us grown-ups and governments and business leaders awake at night, I'm a big fan of giving kids those challenges because they don't worry about profit. They don't worry about, can I afford my holiday if we don't get this job done? They just get on with it. They're full of ideas. And I've always said the best city will always be the one that's designed through the lens of a child, because a child doesn't drive. So we'll not worry about pollution in the future because it'll not be a city for cars. Think about Dubai. Dubai was designed for cars. Now, I'm sure there'll be arguments and there'll be challenges about that. But if you want to take a walk with your family in Dubai, there are green spaces. But I like to walk. I can't walk in Dubai. I can't walk very far before I hit a car park and suddenly my GPS and my navigation has gone, oh, there's a wall here and the footpath continues down there somewhere. I've done that. So if you want to do a 10-mile hike through Dubai, it's not going to happen. And to be fair, you've got to go in November if you want to do that. I don't advocate it. I met some young people. There are the most fantastic children in the Uptown International School who won our rail challenge last year, and they had to design a railway station. I think 3 of them had never been on the metro. They drive everywhere. They never use public transport. And I was shocked. I'm just chin on the floor. What? You've never been on a bus? Nope. Never been on the metro? You've got a great metro system. You've never been on it? No, because we just have to drive it. If we wanted to go to school, we have to drive. Oh my God, that's a city built for cars. And the thing that's worrying about that is that children become entrenched that this is the way. I get in the car. I don't walk. So I think evolution will be that children will no longer have feet. They'll not need feet. Maybe it'll just be a torso. Maybe we'll not need legs because we'll sit all day and we won't need to walk anywhere. That sounds like Armageddon. But anyway, teach about sustainability. And if you can ditch the car and use the bus, and that's why you start young, because you don't think about the car first. You think about your little legs. So great, fantastic. Let's think about equipping students with the knowledge to tackle all those problems. I think real partnerships between school and industry, I would love to see the future where it's a school is where there is a workplace too. Once I set up a vision for a studio school and some wonderful people work with me. And we called it the Institute for Design, Space and Place. And we never did it. We won the right to build this school. And I actually said, oh my God, it was a 14 to 19 school. And as a parent, I just thought, do I want to pull my kid out of school at 14? Send them to the school that is almost like a guinea pig school. But I would so love to see this in the future. And that was a school where there is the school, but all these little startups are allowed a rent-free place in the school, little offices around it, and we'll get over the safeguarding. That'll all be fine. There'll be checks and measures. Children will be safe. But the free rent comes because you have to go into school and support the teacher to learn. So you're a computer nerd startup. Sorry, nerds, that's wrong. There are some, let's face it. I am not. I wish I was. But the computer geeks, the nerds, can go into school and bring the computer science to life because that is one dull curriculum at the moment. So let's get those guys in. The architects can go in. The engineers can go in. And we have this lovely, seamless school where the industry and relevance is always there because industry is always there. I'd love to see that. So that opportunity in the future where there are real partnerships between schools and industry that really encourage and support and nurture that talent, confidence and equitable education. So that will be cool. And I guess from a digital transformation, I guess if every school could have the technology that we talked about that could be using technology, because let's face it, kids can't build stuff. They don't have the money. They don't have the knowledge and skills. So the more we can embed digital competence early in children's education and give them access to the tools. And we do it. We've proven it works. We've proven that children can get in there, and you need to do an energy analysis very young in life to make sure the science works. So I would love to see that children can have that access to digital globally. So wherever you are in the world and whatever your background, you have access to great tools so that every child has the same opportunity wherever they are. I don't know if that's a bit, too optimistic. Can there be such a thing as too optimistic? But I'd love to see that. And when I think about the money that's wasted on wars, I read the Ukraine war, 400 billion. I want to say to Putin, could we not have spent that money better on education? So every child could have had great technology and shaped the future. I'm not apportioning blame here. That's not for me to do. But my goodness, the wars, the riots, the falling out, this world is a very sad place. When you think about, you switch the news on and I see things like the things that are happening in Gaza, for example, and just mass devastation. And I sometimes think the leaders who make that decision to do that, if they could just stop and think, the 400 billion that's going to cost to rebuild the damage I'm going to make could have given children the opportunity in education, could have given every child. We could have been all connected. And I guess that's the thing, isn't it? I guess that kind of world peace is not just everybody loving each other. It's just think of how better you could spend the money. Don't waste 400 billion.
That would be lovely if those decision makers could make this kind of thinking. Alison, to be honest, I could ask you for hours because I would love to understand what you mean by technology, by sustainability, by resilience, because those are all murky terms. But I want to be respectful of your time because you woke up very early for this conversation. What is your role in establishing the future of cities?
There was a teacher who said, thank you for creating DEC, Design Engineer Construct. I read that. I was like, wow, really? My role is encouraging other people to do the same, to just create something that makes learning relevant. I have to be so careful here because to all the educators who are listening here, I'm just a land surveyor. And maybe I wasn't a very good one of those. I don't know. I didn't have many complaints. I seem to do all right. I worry about using the words, I am an educator. I provided a tool to support a way of learning. I call myself an educator. That would be so wrong. I'm not, because I don't have a degree in education. I don't have a PhD, but I do listen an awful lot. And if somebody says it would be great if we could do this, X, Y, or Z, I find a way to do it, I guess. It comes back to that optimism. I think there's always a way. There will always be a way. And I guess when we put on some of these big challenges, it's like hospitals, we have kids designing neonatal centres. And people go, kids designing neonatal centres? How the hell did they do that? It's just a building. It's just a very specialised building. Why not? So I suppose if I can encourage people to just believe that they can do stuff like this, that they can change stuff. I'm not special. I'm really not special. I don't think I've done anything that's rocket science. This is one thing I don't understand. This is not rocket science. Have a purpose for what you learn is not rocket science, but find a mechanism to make it more exciting, interesting, fun. I once said, at what point did we say that you couldn't have fun in education anymore? I've never known a time when teachers are so demoralised. They're judged on their targets. We've got to get out all our children to at least get a C in GCSE, and we're so target-driven, and we have to do this. We have no time. I think it's so sad because teachers love teaching. They get into teaching because they love working with children. They love that child who comes and goes, I get that. Oh, it was so wonderful. And last night I did this and I talked to my mum and dad because yesterday's lesson was so exciting. And I think teachers are so hammered by targets now. Everything is about, did you achieve this? Did you tick that box? Education is becoming like a business. How much profit did we make? How many bums on seats did we get? Instead of saying, well, actually, how many happy children went away just skipping out of school because they had such a wonderful time and found the job. And I think teachers have got it so difficult. There's another quote. So not only thank you for creating DEC, listeners, design, engineer, construct, but one teacher said to me, this is why I got into teaching. Oh, wow. Thank you for teaching it. It's so nice. So I think, if anything, it's to inspire that industry can work better with schools. Teachers can find that purpose in life to actually bring the built environment to life, their homes, their hospitals, etc. And I guess, if anything, it's please use this mechanism for every subject. You could do this everywhere. Geography, history could be more lifelike. I hope I've given people confidence that an ordinary person like me can do something that helps other people to make sense and have a purpose in life. Anywhere where there's devastation, whether it's war or whether it's a natural disaster, or whether it's just a city that's fallen behind the times and needs a great investment. It's interesting. I work very closely with Kaunas University, the KTU, University of Technology in Lithuania. And there are wonderful people there. And Andreas, the dean of the university, he uses the stuff that we do with kids every year, and he brings local schools in. And one year he used our SOS challenge. You can find it on our website. It's the Sustainable Outreach Shelter. And the Ukraine war had just started. And he said, Ali, the whole idea is kids taking a football stadium and transforming it into a shelter, into housing. So you've got to think about monumental construction. Can they repurpose the stadium? Let's face it, you've got these layers of seats. So maybe they could block these seats and turn them into housing and bring in house. They've got a huge grass area. Could they turn that into a little place where they could educate and so on? So it was basically, what can you do with a redundant football stadium? And KTU took local schools and they turned it into a refugee center for Ukraine refugees. And at that time, anybody who was using this free-to-use little challenge project for schools, we just said, please just donate a tenner, just £10 to Disaster Emergency Fund for Ukraine. And hopefully we raised a little bit of money. I guess every little helps. We didn't raise 400 billion, but every little helps. So we've been trying to help Ukraine, and lots of people have been trying to help Ukraine over the years. Just a few months ago, I saw one of our fantastic head teachers down in the Philip Morant School in Colchester, a lovely lady called Steph Neal, who's worked with me for many years, had some brilliant students come through. She's been head teacher while our subject's been embedded there. She was helping young Ukrainian refugees, children who'd come over to UK, just make sure that their visa extended long enough to help them sit their GCSEs, their exams when they're 16. If they have to go home, they've not got that exam. What's the education purpose been for? At least they've got something to show for it. And yet, sadly, that's how we measure children, the exam. But she wanted to make sure they had that to take home with them. And it got me thinking, my goodness, there'll be an awful lot of the men went to fight and the women came here with their children, and we housed families, as everybody around the world did. We housed families and helped our Ukrainian friends. And there are such intelligent women over here in UK who don't have the visa to work as an architect. So they work in a shop. And there's nothing wrong with working in a shop. But my goodness, these big brains that these wonderful women have spent years in university, they're suddenly having to come and work in a shop because they're not allowed to do their day job. And I thought, how sad is that? There's all these amazing women who could educate. You could go into a classroom, Fanny, and really support learning, right? With your knowledge, you could bring that learning to life for any teacher. And so I rang Steph up one night and I said, would you help me? We have a training program for teachers, for professionals to come into teaching. If women want to, could we educate women? Because my goodness, when they do go home, there's one heck of a building project there for Ukraine. The future of cities, the future of Ukraine is going to take some doing, and it's going to take some really special people. And wouldn't it be wonderful if we could, if they wanted to, if we could retrain these amazing women as teachers so they could go and teach our program, so they could get the children learning about the built environment and the history and the geography and the English and the maths and all those things that we just talked about, and give them the purpose in life to teach, because education will transform Ukraine in the future. It has to. We can't rely on all the outside people to build their cities again. So we just started a project. I'm going down to see Steph on Thursday. I can't wait. Myself and Vicky, one of my colleagues who ran teacher training for the northwest of England. She's an amazing teacher. She teaches DEC, taught it for about 10 years. We're going to go down to Steph and sit in a room, probably drink lots more coffee, a few biscuits. I'm going to sit in a room with some Ukrainian friends and say, could we help by educating the future of construction for Ukraine? So that purpose, that mission comes through again. And I think if Ukraine wants it, then let's help Ukraine to get there and use these wonderful women in a better way than serving in shops. And let's make use of their amazing brains to get those wonderful children an ambition, an appetite, a career in the future. It's going to need that. And I'd love to think that we can support Ukraine's mission to educate their future of construction, to get Ukraine back to where the amazing country that it used to be, and not this place that's unfortunately ruined. It's crazy. It's almost curvy-shouldered, be careful what you say. But I do think that some of the world's leaders, they must have massive egos, because to allow that to happen to children, to allow children's futures to be devastated, that's not human. So hopefully we can do a little bit. It feels quite emotional, really. Well, I hope we can do a little bit to help. And maybe our children who are learning now, who are coming to that age where they can maybe take a gap year in Ukraine and help to rebuild it. That would be wonderful too. So the whole world is helping young people of Ukraine to rebuild their lives, because I can't imagine. I look at my own daughter who has a lovely life and our children who have everything to be optimistic about. And I look at places like Gaza and Ukraine and I think, what life will that child have? They can't just nip in a school classroom and learn stuff. There's not even any plants left in Gaza. The whole place is devastated. And I think that's incredibly sad. So yeah, education's got to be part of that solution too for them. I hope it works. We've got to try, right?
Indeed we do. And Alison, thank you so much for your work. Please keep up this good purpose, because we need this kind of thinking to create a better future for cities and humanity. Do you have any closing comments or requests for the audience?
Fanny, you've done some pretty incredible podcasts. You've met incredible people. There are some really special people out there, and I applaud you for what you do. And thank you for giving us a voice. But there's a collective of people who, like me, care an awful lot about the planet, and listen to some of your podcasts over the weekend in my quiet time with my earphones on in the countryside. I just thought, wow, there's some incredible people out there. Because this is not just about construction people. You've interviewed some amazing people who wouldn't label themselves construction. Absolutely not. But there's some amazing people out there. And I would like to say to the audience, if anybody, we have some really special projects for some really special people coming up, not least in our own country, but in Ukraine. I'm trying to help a fantastic gentleman in Moldova, Hospices for Hope. We need to build a hospice in Moldova and a lot of other Eastern European countries. And there's some really important projects that will need to be done over the years. So if you're interested in helping and you have a big heart like me and maybe access to a bit of funds as well, because they're going to need that too. I'm not asking for 400 billion, but mind you, if you've got it, let's bring it on. Let's rebuild overnight. I would just love to get some of these fantastic hearts and minds together and solve some of these problems and come together to help people who really need it most. So if you're out there and you want to get involved, you can use support@classofyourown.com. and get in touch. Become our friend, and let's help lots of people.
All of the links will be in the show notes, so everyone can check them out and connect with you, Alison, and the Class of Your Own, and the deck as well.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Alison.
It's been wonderful. Lovely to talk to you, Fanny. Thank you.
And you. It was really interesting to hear from Alison about education as increasing confidence and resilience for the next generation, not to mention her conviction of needing to involve the next generation into urban decision-making. Aaron Stappel and Logan Chipkin discussed this as well in episode 340. You can find out more about Alison online. All the links are in the show notes. What was the most interesting part for you? What questions did arise regarding Alison's approach to the future of cities? What have you learned from this interview? Let me know on Twitter at WTF4Cities or on the WTF4Cities.com website where the transcripts and show notes are available. You can also subscribe on the website not to miss any new episodes and leave some feedback. I hope this was an interesting interview for you as well, and thanks for tuning in.
What is the Future for Cities podcast?